Good morning, guys, and welcome to the show. Today we are going to show you how we deal with wiring up a radio to a harness. I know what you're thinking, but you'd be surprised. A lot of people still ask us how it's done. And today we're going to walk you through the steps that we use when we're doing an iData Maestro piece. There's some cool features that it has that you might be interested in, as well as the way we do it. Of course, it's a little bit different than expected. So stay tuned. Putting in a radio is still one of the most popular things to do in a vehicle, and today we have a Toyota Tacoma, which is an HRTOY3 harness. Now, if you're wondering where you find this information out, head over to iData Maestro, and you can plug in your make, model, and year, figure out which piece works best for your car, as well as download the flashing software so that you can tell the RR which car it's going to go into. We do have videos showing you how to flash an RR. In this case, we're putting it in a Kenwood. Now, the Kenwood radio comes with this harness here, which is a standard Kenwood. It has all the standard colors. However, iData now has these harnesses, which are designed to bypass having to attach one of these in, meaning I don't have to use this anymore. I can just plug this into that and I'm done. There are some older versions of this and they will not say HR, so HR stands for harness ready, which this is the harness they're referring to. And just to review real quick what all the colors on this mean, because some of you guys, you need a refresher course and we're here to provide it. Let's talk about speakers first. You have white, gray, green, and purple. White is driver's front, gray is passenger front, green is driver's rear, purple is passenger rear. The black stripes are the negatives, the solids are the positives. Next we have our three power wires, which are yellow, constant 12 volts, red, accessory, key, and black is ground. Then we have some secondary wires. Orange white is illumination, that's what dims the radio. Purple white is reverse. Blue white is amplifier turn on. Blue is power antenna. Green is emergency brake. Pink is vehicle speed sense or VSS. Now in this particular Kenwood, you'll have a couple extra wires which are green with white and green with red. Those are specifically designed to work with one of their cameras. And you also have light blue with yellow, which is for adding an external steering wheel control. Those three wires are not needed to be used with this particular installation. Let's take a look at this Ken 1 here. Hanging off it are those three wires we told you you're not going to need. And then we have a little taped up male and female harness. This end here is designed to go on the radio, and this end here is designed to plug into the TO3. The first thing I need to do is get rid of this piece of tape that is covering up the center, which if you cut the white piece properly, it should do that. Once I've done that, I get my three wires off to the side here, grab my JK tape. This is the exterior version of it. I'm going to come in 1.5 inches from the plug over, start wrapping the tape towards the other plug, and once I get 1.5 inches from there, I'll put an extra wrap around it and then cut it about 1 inch from the plug. Grab the three wires that we're not going to be using and apply some tape to those. I leave the cam plus and negative on there and I just wrap them around just like this. Hold them with my finger like so, add a zip tie. My little adapter harness is set. Next up, this Toyota is going to need an antenna adapter. This is the LX8 from PAC. Same JK tape. 1.5 inches off from the end here. Go around twice. Spread them apart like so. Take the tape and go up the antenna blue wire. For now, that is also done. Next, RR. When opening these, I like to open them from the bottom here. It makes it way easier than trying to deal with the tape that's on here. Slide it out. Plus, if I need to put it back in the box, I can do it without destroying the box. This RR is already flashed to the Toyota we're putting it in. Set it right up here for right now. Open my Ziploc bag and dump out my part. If you don't have a readily accessible USB to micro USB, there is one in the box. The next harness you're gonna find is this one here that has that blue with yellow and an 1/8 inch on it and then a small blue plug. This is only needed if you're gonna be installing this into a radio that is not iData compatible. compatible, in which case this is iData compatible. We're not going to need this. The next two harnesses are an aux with a 3-pin plug. This is for audio that may need to come from the vehicle or go out to the vehicle. And then there's a double 4-pin plug. This is the data connection. In the Toyota that we're doing, all it needs is the 4-pin data connection. It will not need this. And the new HR harnesses, all of the cables are extra long now. So if you've ever put one of these in before, it's kind of about that long. They're not that long anymore. And there's a reason for it, which we'll show you. Plug it in and set this aside. Always plug it in, that way you don't lose that cable. Open it from the bottom and dump out our goodies. First thing we're gonna find for this particular one, and a lot of the other ones, is the amplified harness adapter. This is just for front, because the JBL system in these only uses 2 channels of audio from the radio, left and right, that's it. Everything else is created inside of the amplifier. We have an OBD2 adapter here. When you download the instructions, it'll tell you the pieces that you need for your install. In this case, our install doesn't need this. However, just so you know how we prep this, because this is something that we use a lot of, unwind it like so to where you have your wire, grab your end using the JK exterior tape. For this one, I get as close to the OBD2 as possible. The reason for that is this is something you're going to see in the bottom of the dash. I want to have it as insulated and look as inconspicuous as I possibly can. When wrapping it, I try to keep this angle of the tape as sharp as possible. That way I'm doing bigger wraps as I do it. I want to pull it like this. I'm getting at least an inch, inch and an eighth, as opposed to 3/4 of an inch. So I'm wrapping more surface area than the tape is wide. That means I will use less tape. I'll tape that all the way up to the end here, and then that way I can plug it into the brain and this will be insulated all the way through the car. The reason why we have this new super long data connection as well as steering wheel control cable is because they've redesigned the harness into this Y-shaped. This is where the car will plug in here, but way over here on this end is the RR, and then way over here on this end is going to be what we're going to plug our little harness into, like so, and then our backup camera would be there. So we now have a much longer connector so that we can put our brain somewhere else, because they didn't always fit behind the radio, and then our plugs, if we need to, we can pull them around, tuck them into the dash, and then we just have our umbilical for the radio. So this is a redesign which makes things really, really nice. And if you'd like to put it in just like this, you can. It's pretty. They've taped it up that everything is in its own little bundles. It looks really nice. However, what we like to do is add a little bit more tape to it. With that little piece of tape off, on these smaller plugs, I like to come in about an inch. And I wrap it up about 4 inches. And you always wrap from the plug into the center. So you wouldn't start here and go this way, start at the plug and come into the center here like this. Now these two harnesses go on the same side, that's why they were taped together. That means I will do the same thing. Once they both get to about 4 inches, I pick them both into the main and then I tape them up until I get to this wide piece of tape here. Cut the tape on the other side. That gives me the green and the black. Repeat the same process. This end does have a fuse on it. It does make it easier to wrap. Now you remove the bundle of tape that is holding the whole harness together. Wrap black and red so you get to the end of the fuse holder. Grab the green harness, add some tape, grab your other harness, so now you have all 4 harnesses in one nice bundle, just like they had. Bring them all together up to the Y, located right here. And now I have a fully insulated harness side. Remove the tape on the radio side. In this case, remove it all. When taping up the harness, there's usually going to be the OBD2 connector somewhere in this side. Make sure to pull that out, just like this. Don't tape over it in the harness. Add some harness tape to it. And then there's a remote turn-on wire that is also right here. I'm just gonna leave that alone for right now. I don't need to do anything to it. Coming down to the radio end, there's a power antenna. It has a terminal on it. I'm gonna cut that off. It's just a speaker terminal. We don't use those style connectors. Get all the little labeling tape off it. Starting at the connector, wrap it out. This is the antenna adapter we taped up earlier. We're gonna finish these off right now. I like to take some blue heat shrink. That'll finish off both those ends so that tape won't unravel. You have a male and a female bullet connector is what we like to use. On the plug car side, use the female. That is gonna have a fully insulated head. That way when it's disconnected, this won't touch any metal and cause any fuses to blow. And put the male end on the antenna adapter itself. Plug those two together, just like this. Set that aside. Depending on the harness that you're working with, the backup camera is always included in the bundle going over there. Some of these are going to have multiple connections depending on the car. Either way, I always remove out my backup camera and keep that totally separate from the harness. I don't want it in here. The reason for that is if this isn't long enough and or this goes bad or anything like that, I don't want it to be caught up in this tape because there's no reason why I need to untape this once I'm done. The other thing you'll notice on these iData harnesses is this thing that says mic and it's orange wires. This is a future product that they're working on. It should be out shortly. This will allow you to retain your factory mic when doing the installation. When looking at the harness, to me there's two groups of wires. There's the speaker wires and there is the power wires. The speaker wires I like to separate out from my main wiring harness like this and pull them over here and separate them as much as I possibly can away from my main power harness. The reason for that is if we're doing an install where this is going to go off to the aftermarket radio, they might come back and add an aftermarket amplifier at some point. I want to keep these on their own so I don't have to interfere with this. So by having them over here doing their own thing, this would be all I would have to deal with in the future. You can tape these all up by themselves, starting at the harness end. Now, if there is a harness with a plug like this, I always unplug it. And the reason for that is it's a small plug and I don't want it to get pulled tight and ripped apart in the dash. So I'll add tape like that and then come back in and do this. That way that's safe. It can move around and it's not going to get ripped out or anything like that. And that leaves us with this. This is where we like to modify this harness. Pull out the black, the yellow, the red, and the blue-white. Get them into a nice open area and cut them. Make sure to untangle them from the harness. Now the reason why we did that, Kenwood offers a couple options. They offer a backup camera and they offer a dash cam. The backup camera is going to need an accessory and a ground. The dash cam is going to need a constant 12 volts and a ground. And if you're going to add any form of an amplifier, you may need a remote turn on. Even though the customer may not be doing these things today, we want to be prepared for it. So when he comes back, I don't have to pull this harness apart. What we do is cut 6-inch pieces off of our roll of each one of these colors and then add them into our harness. And we'll solder them in and we'll solder the harness back together. Shrink wrap in place. Grab your 4 new wires that you just soldered in and make sure that they're fanned over here to the side and far away from what we just did. Grab the JK exterior tape, 1.5" on this one from the end. Come in and right before you get to the solder point, right before that shrink wrap, stop. Go to the other side, starting at the radio plug. Come in, and right before you get to that tape, stop. So now we've come this way with our tape. The last part is come into this area where they're all wide in, get them situated, and work from the Y out to this end here. We have a bit of scrap heat shrink. We'll put a piece over that tape that we just finished to lock it in place. Cut all 4 of these to length. And like all things that we do, there was a reason why we just did it. Why we came this way, why we came this way, and why we went out that way. We don't want to tape over what we've just soldered with the same tape that we covered everything else in. We want to be able to find these if we need to. The other thing is we want to unwrap the tape if we need to at some point without removing the whole thing. If I was to start here at this end and wrap this way, if I needed some slack where I made those solder points, which is the likely spot to need them, I'd have to remove this whole piece of tape. The same is true for this side. So by coming into this, if I need to, I can unravel this way to widen this gap that we just made. The second part of this is to change the tape. For this, we'll just take some JK, what we call fuzzy tape, which is just interior tape, and we'll wrap around it a couple times. And once we have it done, it'll look like this. The nice thing about this is if I ever need to get into this connection for any point, the only piece of tape that I really need to remove is this little piece I just put on. Why we went this way with this is because these are the ends we're going to be working with. And if we need these to be longer or stripped out or separated, we're going to want to unravel the tape here and not down here, because if this was longer, then I'd have to remove all that tape. I can cut off this purple heat shrink, unravel a couple lines, put on another new piece of heat shrink. I still kept all the tape in place. The next step for this is to add on our female barrel connectors. If we do sell them a camera or a radar or anything like that, and I need these 4 things, remote turn on, let's say I had a sub amp, I can just simply plug into these without manipulating this harness at all. The last step, plug in the brain. I like to manhandle it a little bit to get all my harnesses flexible, so when I put on the zip ties, there's enough to where this can move around and I don't have any wires that are pinched or pulled or will come out. Like, they're so tight they'll come out if it's jacked in the dash just a little bit. Make sure I check that middle, there's enough room there. I don't like putting zip ties over solder points. That's another nice thing about changing the tape like that. I know where my solder point is. At this point I'm bringing in the power antenna for this last zip tie. That data wire, as we can see, is nice and long. I'll plug into the back of the radio. Camera wire's a little bit longer too. Once I plug in the short harness like this, I don't zip tie these onto here. I don't want to do that. I want these to be their own little pigtail off of here. That way, if I ever need to remove this, it's easy enough to do. I don't have to remove any zip ties. And there we have it. There is our new radio harness. A couple questions you may be thinking is, why not do this connection here? And there's an easy enough explanation for that, in that we've actually done it there before. But what happened in that particular case, they decided to change what radio they had. They decided to go from one manufacturer to the next. So we had to take this off, put another one into it. That meant we had to redo the harness that we were swapping to add these back into it, because it did have a backup camera. That way the overall harness would stay the same through every installation. All right guys, there you go. That's what makes sense to us. This is how we like to wire these things up. They go into the car nice and flexible, and they look good, and it looks factory, and that's what I like. Fernando, if you please.
On to the next one, guys.
We hope you really enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe, like, thumbs up, do all that fun stuff you're supposed to do in this YouTube universe. You guys have a great night as always. We'll see you later next time.
Bye.
Bye.